Well, welcome back to another week's analysis behind the news. You know, people get incensed about things and they react as a result. This has been one of the main tools of the conspiracy that we battle, is the ability to react individuals into doing something that people want. Let me give you a military example. If you set up an ambush, what you want to do is fire upon the troops that you're attacking in such a manner that it makes them move, react, in the direction you want them to go. For instance, if you've got a road and the troops are running down the road and you set up an ambush on one side and fire at those troops, they'll want to react by going out of the road to the opposite side of the road, to any cover or concealment that they see there, and you could have already salted that area with landmines that will blow up when they react to the initial ambush into that minefield. Well, it's the same way. They create minefields for us politically, so that they fire at us, get us to react in such a way that they wanted us to move to begin with. Now, I don't believe ISIS is stupid, and yet they're doing all sorts of stupid things to react the American people into wanting troops on the ground to wipe out ISIS. Now, the latest one is another beheading. This is the Wall Street Journal this morning. Militants kill U.S. hostage. Don't they know, and of course they do, what the reaction of the American people would be to these killings, these brutal beheadings with a knife, not a sword, not a guillotine, nothing of that nature, just sawing their head off, doing it on video, making it so bloody and terrible that people get so incensed they react. We've got to do something, we've got to go wipe those people out, so on and so forth. And so that is what they're doing. Here's another one. These are mock-ups, if you will, or visual displays of a recent announcement by ISIS that they're going to start issuing money, real money, in copper, silver, and gold. And these are what they are going to look like. Now, there's something that you'd never want to do, and that is tick off the Federal Reserve, or to tick off the World Bank, and come out with an independent currency, a currency that you can carry anywhere around the world in your pocket, currency that has intrinsic value. Conservatives, libertarians, people who really understand economics know that real money, as the Constitution says, is silver and gold. And so when they're starting to do this, when they're starting to produce this, when we know that the Federal Reserve, our own government, and the governments around the world have done everything they could to prevent the use of gold and silver as portable coinage, then this is going to create a reaction. It's going to cause some problems. And so that's the sort of thing that we see happening in the way of ISIS, doing things that are going to cause reactions against them. So they have something else in mind. And if they're trying to create a reaction, what is that? Well, the clue is from people like Senator McCain and others, Miller on Fox News the other day, this Judith Miller, I believe her name is, saying what we're witnessing in the Middle East is the beginning of a 30-year war. As one wag said to me this morning, well, that's better than McCain saying we're seeing a 100-year war. But regardless of whether it's 30 years, 100 years, or whatever, we're going into an Orwellian stage. And by that I mean Orwell wrote, Blair was actually his name, wrote the novel 1984, where we had constant war in that novel between three sections of the world, A and B fighting C, and B and C fighting A, and then A and C fighting B, etc. But it was a perpetual war, and it was a perpetual war for perpetual peace, was the slogan that Orwell used in his novel. And it was perpetual peace on the part of the people at the pinnacle of these governments controlling their own citizenry. In other words, the draconian laws, the taxation, and all the various things that went into the daily life of the citizens were so bad that these people had to keep their citizens' minds on war, on patriotism to win the war. They would do anything to win the war, even if it meant privation, personally, more taxation, so on and so forth, even if it meant no sex. Now, that is an interesting aspect of this novel that people don't seem to bring out in today's society. See, they actually had organizations, the Anti-Sex League in 1984, that prevented people from having male-female relations and having children. That is a clue of what's happening in the gay community today, that we see, this change in society, all these various things that are being set in motion, the way Orwell was pointing out that the international socialists wanted to move us as a society into war perpetually, into no sex normally, so on and so forth. All of these things are sort of melded together into the modern society that 1984 pointed out that the international socialists wanted to control us. So those sorts of things we have to watch out for, that we are not reacted into the minefield that the conspiracy wants us to run into. Another thing that they do in this process is they take over the language through the semantical terms. They get us to use terms that are self-defeating if we use them. Instead of saying merger between nations, they've got us using the term free trade. It's a trap. It's not free trade. They put free trade on the agreements, but it's actually merger on an international scale between the signatories on these agreements. Another one that they use is democracy, and a lot of you out there know there is a difference between democracy and republic. If we use the term democracy, constantly have that in our language, ultimately we will be a democracy, something that our forefathers were always opposed to. Anyone who signed the Constitution of the United States in that Constitutional Convention were opposed to democracy. Now, some of them later on kind of waffled back and forth, but they understood that democracy leads to mobocracy, which leads to total government control. And so what we have is a republic, and because we use these different semantical terms, we get into these traps where we can't even talk about certain things because we're using the language that the other side has given us to use. There's other things like immigration, for instance. Immigration is a legal process. What we are seeing is migration. We tend not to use that term migration for a number of different reasons. For one thing, the left uses it, but they do understand what the term means. Immigration is a legal process that all of us can support. Migration is millions of people coming into our country illegally. And so we should not refer to it as immigration or immigration reform. It's migration, and it's very dangerous. And anyway, these are just a few of the thoughts relative to the minefields that we have to watch out for and how we react based on what the other side does when we should act on our own. Until next week, we'll see you then.